Welcome to Life as God Intended. I'm Don Brzezinski. And today, we're beginning a powerful 4-part series on a topic that affects so many of us, perfectionism. This series, titled Breaking Free from Perfectionism, is designed to help you uncover the truth about perfectionism and discover the freedom God desires for your life. At first glance, perfectionism might seem like a good thing. After all, doesn't striving for excellence help us succeed? But beneath the surface, perfectionism is often rooted in control, fear, and a distorted sense of self-worth. It's a relentless pursuit that robs us of peace, joy, and the abundant life God has intended for us. Today, in part 1, we'll explore what perfectionism really is, how it impacts our emotional well-being, and why this isn't the life that God desires for us by living in a perfectionistic way. Stay with me and let's explore how we can walk in the freedom that comes from trusting God's sufficiency. What is perfectionism? Perfectionism is often misunderstood. It's not just a personality trait or a sign of hard work. It's a distortion of God's intentions for our lives. Instead of pursuing an image of personal perfection, God invites us to embrace His grace, which frees us from the need to earn worthiness. For those of us who are deeply committed to following Scripture, it's easy to miss how perfectionism sneaks into our spiritual lives. We can even unconsciously shift from a relationship-focused walk of faith, grounded in the receptivity to Christ, to a rigid adherence to standards and expectations. This can make even our spiritual life feel like a burden instead of a joy. Take a moment to ask yourself, is your relationship with Christ centered on intimacy and trust? Or do you find yourself striving to get it right on your own? Recognizing this is the first response of faith toward experiencing the freedom that God offers. So what are some of the signs of perfectionism? Well, here, let me give you some indications. Number 1, you have unrealistic expectations, setting the bar so high that nothing ever feels good enough. Number 2, obsessing over small mistakes, fixating on minor errors and letting them consume your thoughts. Number 3, an all or nothing attitude or thinking, viewing tasks as either a total success or a complete failure with no room for grace. Number 4, procrastination. You might not have thought that that would be in the list, but you see, delaying tasks out of fear that they won't be perfect is also a form of perfectionism. Number 5, self-criticism. Focusing on your flaws while ignoring your strengths and achievements. This is another one you may not have thought would be in the list. And finally, number 6, inability to relax. Struggling to switch off from work or responsibilities even during downtime. I might illustrate it like this. Think of someone rewriting a report over and over because it's never quite perfect. It never quite measures up to their expectation. Or someone delivering an excellent presentation, but obsessing over some minor slip-up that they noticed. You see, this cycle is exhausting and leaves little room for peace. Perfectionism has an emotional toll connected to it. Perfectionism isn't just frustrating, it's damaging. It's linked to anxiety, depression, and feelings of inadequacy. The more we strive to meet impossible standards, the more we feel like failures when we inevitably fall short, and of course we will. But here's the good news. God doesn't expect you to achieve perfection in your own strength. Philippians 3:15 reminds us that Christians are made spiritually perfect through Christ's presence. Did you get that? And as we rely on Him, His perfect character is expressed in us and through us. The Apostle Paul warned in Galatians chapter 3 and verse 3, "Are ye so foolish? Having begun in the Spirit, are ye now made perfect by the flesh?" This striving in the flesh, whether for success or even spiritual worthiness, only leads to frustration. And God never intended you to carry that burden. So what areas of your life are weighed down by perfectionism? Well, lest you can't have any come to mind, let me give you some examples that might help you. First, the workplace stress. Do you feel the need to over-deliver on every task, even at the expense of your own well-being? What about you parents? Parenting pressures. Are you striving to be the perfect parent, feeling like any mistake will negatively impact your children? What about your spiritual life and your spiritual practices? Do you approach Bible reading, prayer, or church involvement with a sense of obligation rather than joy, fearing you're not doing enough, measuring up? What about in the area of your relationships? Do you set unattainable standards for yourself and for others, leading to frustration, disappointment, and maybe even arguments? What about the area of your personal appearance or health? Are you overly critical of your own body, your own fitness, or your diet, feeling like you always fall short of your goals? The last area that I'll mention to give you something to ponder would be the decision-making process. Do you agonize over making the perfect choice, afraid of failure or regret? How would it feel to release these burdens to God? By the way, on that decision-making agony process that you might find yourself in, you might want to look at a previous video that I did on the subject. In conclusion, we've seen today that perfectionism isn't just about striving. It's not just about excellence. It can become a heavy burden that robs us of joy and peace. But the good news is that God has a better way. And I should probably add that there's a big difference between the excellence of what Christ's character manifests through you looks like and perfectionism, which is in your own strength and efforts. But in part 2 of this series, we'll dig into the deeper roots of perfectionism, where it comes from, how it's tied to fear and identity, or the lack of understanding your identity, and how we can start to break free from it. Until then, take some time to reflect on how perfectionism might be affecting your life. Remember, God's grace is sufficient for you, and your worth isn't something you earn, it's a gift you receive. Thank you for joining me today on Life as God Intended. If this message spoke to your heart, share it with someone who needs encouragement. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already so that you can stay connected as we continue this journey together. And until next time, may you rest in God's grace and walk in the freedom He's intended for you.